comrades and friends, it's such a pleasure to be speaking to you this morning, and it's such an inspiring sight to see so many young people, so many young revolutionaries in our party, around our party, and it's so important because you are our future. You're the future of the revolution in this country and around the world. So I know for the last year, I've been traveling around as a presidential candidate, and I have to say it's so refreshing to be speaking to you really as a revolutionary of Workers' World Party. I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief that these horrid bourgeois elections are behind us, but the struggle is far from being over, and there is so much work to be done, which we will be discussing not only in this panel, but throughout the weekend. And I have to say that, you know, being a sports fan, because my father was a basketball coach, and growing up with that, I understand that I've become to understand that really politics transcends all sectors of society, including sports. And so I've been reading a lot of what the black athletes have been saying about the Trump elections. And it's the same questions and the same concerns and the same fears that so many people have in this country. Same questions. How did Trump get elected? Why did he get elected? How did Hillary Clinton lose? How did she lose? So these are some of the questions that we want to get to the heart of in this conference and really after the conference. But before I get into my particular remarks, I want to salute my vice presidential candidate, Lamont Lilly. As most of you know, has been exemplary in so many ways that I can't mention them all in this talk, but especially his dynamism in explaining the party's perspective to the younger generation, and also his patience in listening to others, because these are the skills that you must develop to become a cadre in Workers' World Party. And I've learned so much from him this past year, so I want to thank him publicly for your self-sacrificing commitment to the party and to the struggle. Now you can start the time. I also want to salute all of the young people who continue to take to the streets in so many cities, large and small, once it became official that the racist, misogynist, xenophobic, scumbag Trump became the 45th US president. And everybody in the streets, they were chanting, besides "fuck Trump." But this became the #1 hashtag, "not my president," for many days. This massive outpouring in the tens of thousands included high school and college students who walked out of their classes, tens of thousands of people just in New York City Wednesday night. The majority of them descended on Trump towers, and 60 were reportedly arrested. Protesters in Oakland were tear-gassed. Thousands came out in Baltimore from a call put out by the People's Power Assembly. In Jersey City, where I live, a thoroughly multinational city that Trump attacked during his campaign for supposedly supporting the attacks on 9/11. Young Muslim students held a protest near St. Peter's College, which is a Jesuit college. This demo, although small in numbers, was so important politically because Jersey City is not known for being holding any kind of major protest or known for any type of real activism. And because this was such a heroic act, because as we all know, Muslim people have come under the most heinous attacks by Trump and his neo-fascist supporters. So we should salute every Muslim that comes out to defend their right to exist in this country. And they shouldn't be doing it alone. We should all be out there with them. But I want to get back to the protest in New York City, because while we expect to see black and brown people in great numbers, there may have been an equal number, if not more, of young whites, many of whom probably were supporters of Bernie Sanders, and maybe some even voted for Hillary Clinton as the lesser evil. The New York demonstration and others like it speak to the point on the need to build broad international solidarity, which doesn't just pertain just to workers and oppressed people living thousands of miles away, but right here in the belly of the beast, the US and vice versa. Here we are in the 21st century where the high-tech, low-pay global economy has both pauperized the global working class on the one hand, but it's also made the world much closer in terms of communications, that we can share important information with people half around the globe in a mere seconds. How this communication can help build more solidarity with movements led by the most oppressed in the streets remains a major challenge, but not a formidable one. There are still instances, notwithstanding the Black Lives Matter or immigrant rights movement, when an anti-war demonstration, let's say in Washington, D.C., has been called, but it doesn't consciously include the aspirations and demands of oppressed peoples living right in Anacostia, the heart of the D.C. Black community, or even the large Salvadoran community in D.C. Or when a demo is called against a U.S. military attack in Yemen or some other country in the Middle East or Africa, why is there more often or not a connection to the militarization of the police in black and brown and indigenous communities inside the U.S., be it in Charlotte, North Carolina, Nogales on the Mexican border, or at Standing Rock, North Dakota? Why is it safer for some to call a demonstration to defend the sovereignty of a country under attack from imperialism, but not call a demo to defend the sovereignty and right to self-determination, which Stop Black People express also talks about the right to self-determination. To understand the essence of solidarity is to understand that imperialism, an economic system whose thirst for super profits based on super exploitation and plunder, knows no borders. And it exists right here in New York City and throughout the United States, and not just thousands of miles away. It was this kind of solidarity against white supremacy that our election campaign was stressing before November 8th, and now with Trump's victory, it is 10 times more necessary. It is this virulent racism that propelled many of our sisters and brothers who are immigrants, Muslims, and other people of color to vote for Hillary Clinton, the neocon, the militarist, and the darling of Wall Street, because of their second-class and third-class treatment in this society. We had no argument with them for voting for Clinton, but we did have an argument with activists and progressive movements using the anti-Trump card as an excuse for voting for Clinton, making our movements more subservient to this ruling class party. That is not the answer. That weakens our movements. So now the racists have become more emboldened, where people of color are concerned throughout every sector of our society. It's hard to read some of the accounts that are going on around the country. And it's getting harder to even look at Twitter with all the hideous examples, including the KKK calling for a victory march in North Carolina on December 3rd. I'm sure our comrades are going to be dealing with that and friends. Or racists calling for the lynchings of black students at the University of Pennsylvania. And we can't forget what the Trump victory means for women. An openly misogynist president will give the green light to even more disgusting objectification of women, along with bigotry against people with disabilities. The Trump victory has unleashed a growing tidal wave of racism, and this is why it is more crucial than ever for all the movements to put aside any political or ideological differences, to form a united front to resist and smash this racist onslaught. So while what happened on November 9th, with tens of thousands of people pouring out into the streets, is so crucial, we have to keep in mind that the police, whose national so-called union endorsed Trump, will become even more violent and militarized, if that is even possible. It will become even more glaring that the KKK and the police work hand in hand as partners within the repressive state apparatus. So what does real solidarity look like, sisters and brothers? Is it an act of charity on the part of those who may historically have had more privilege, especially if they are white, shown towards the most oppressed because they belong to many oppressed nations whose historical language and cultural heritage are very unique? Is solidarity based on moral obligation alone? Well, some may see it that way, but Workers' World Party, we see it a different way, because we are materialists who view every phenomenon in objective prism based on objective conditions which are always changing, always in motion. When Karl Marx stated in the mid-1880s that, quote, labor in the white skin can never be emancipated while labor in the black skin is branded, end quote. He was using specific terminology rooted in a very specific epoch, that being that there were two social systems, slavery and capitalism, on a collision course that resulted in the US Civil War. He was saying that white workers can never be liberated as wage laborers, while black people were used as chattel, that is slave labor. He was stressing that it is in the class interest of white workers to fight side by side with their African sisters and brothers to bring down slavery in order to bring about equality when it came to wages and other basic democratic rights during that epoch. The violent, abrupt end of Reconstruction set back the struggle for black people for basic democratic rights from the late 1870s until this very day, which Comrade Lalani will speak about later on this afternoon. Comrades and friends, the immediate response to the Trump election just in the last 3 days has nothing been short of phenomenon. There are even serious rumblings of calling a general strike on January 20th that we must pay attention to, along with a counter-inauguration that has the potential, and this strike has the potential of being even larger than the great one-day strike on May Day 2006, led by migrant workers in the millions that should include other low-wage workers, unionized workers, prisoners, youth, in other words, the entire working class, employed, unemployed, part-time and full-time workers. And our party can be a strategic and centralized pole to making this happen in terms of helping to unite the left, which still lags behind in reaching its revolutionary potential. But of course, this could all change in the blink of an eye, especially with the intervention of the masses. But sisters and brothers, part of strengthening the left is to strengthen solidarity with the most oppressed, especially youth of color, who even before the elections were the targets of a genocidal police war in many forms, from being shot down in the streets in Charlotte, Baltimore, Milwaukee, Chicago, Los Angeles, and many other places, to being threatened with lynching of black athletes, 12 and 13-year-old black athletes in Beaumont, Texas, and elsewhere for taking a knee against injustice because Colin Kaepernick inspired them to do so, to the police dogs being sicked on children in Standing Rock. The police war illustrates the truth that the left must learn and absorb in their bones, and that is a big section of the working class worldwide, including the US, are our youth, who are being disenfranchised and demonized by the racist capitalist state. If the youth are not defended by the movement, it helps to weaken the entire working class, which serves to strengthen the bourgeoisie. This is why our party has used our election campaign to support and defend the Black Lives Matter uprising from day one, because it is a key component to uniting the working class, which is not homogeneous, which many on the left have failed to recognize. A genuine revolutionary socialist movement cannot move forward if our answer to the question of uniting the working class is to advise all involved to minimize and marginalize the importance of combating racism, the oppression of immigrant workers, the oppression of women, the oppression of lesbian, gay, bi, trans, and queer people, all for the, quote, sake of unity. We must do the opposite of that. Unity and trust within the working class and within our socialist movement can only be accomplished by making the issues of the most oppressed central to our movement. The biggest failure of the Bernie Sanders campaign was not to recognize the centrality of the struggle against racism as embodied by the Black Lives Matter movement. Workers' World Party believes that the Black Lives Matter uprising, which is international in scope, reflects the awakening of a section of the working class that is being transformed by capitalist globalization and technology. There is a social and economic basis for the increase in police repression and the murder in Black and brown communities, along with mass incarceration. The deepening crisis causing havoc within the capitalist system translates into larger and larger sections of the working class becoming, quote, expendable as far as capitalism is concerned. To the extent that capitalism no longer needs their labor, they are subject to murder, prison, in fact, a war that threatens the very survival of Black, brown, and indigenous people. So in closing, let's continue to seize the time of looking for every opportunity, large and small, to build unity within our class, especially with oppressed nations and people, to make a reality that the prediction of Karl Marx and Frederick Engels made in their groundbreaking book, The Communist Manifesto, and that Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution, expanded in his groundbreaking book, Imperialism. And that is, workers and oppressed united will become the real gravediggers of capitalism. On the social revolution, build a workers' world.